Hey everyone! I don't usually record videos on Mondays, but today is a very special day because it makes 2 full months that I've been completely broken up with my narcissistic ex-boyfriend. Today is February 8th, and we officially broke up on December 8th, and I have never felt better. All the other times we broke up, I was depressed, I missed him, I felt horrible, but this time, I guess because I experienced what's called the grand finale, which is the absolute worst breakup you'll ever have with a narcissist, I just realized how toxic he was, and I feel incredible. I also wanted to share something very funny, and by funny, I mean incredibly sad and pathetic. A friend of mine called me yesterday. She said she was watching Dr. Phil, and there's this guy on the show that's exactly like your ex-boyfriend. You really, really have to watch this. It's crazy. So I found the show on YouTube, and it was about a guy who clearly has NPD. He had all the red flags. Super conceited and arrogant. He dressed really flashy. He was kind of sleazy and charming. He took advantage of everyone. And most of all, he was a wannabe rock star. So I started watching the show, and this guy is exactly like Robert. And this is the kind of person that you would look at and say, there's no way this is real. This has to be an act. There's no way someone is that completely full of themselves. People like this are real, and I dated one. So I will put the link at the bottom to that episode, and if you have time, you really need to watch it. It's unbelievable. Anyway, this is red flag number 8, which is called the managing down of expectations. Red flag number 9 is directly related to this topic. I didn't want to include it in the video because it really does stand on its own, but I would like to treat it as a part 2, so please watch that video right after this one. So when you meet someone, you have an idea in your head of how you expect to be treated. You have preferences, and you also have limits. You have sort of a mental book of things that you would never put up with. So to rope you in, the narcissist will figure out exactly what you're looking for, and they'll mirror that. They will be exactly who you want them to be. But remember, it's all an act. It's not real. So once they've got you hooked, they slowly start to push your limits. Now, the longer you stay in this relationship, and this goes not just for narcissists, but for really any type of toxic or abusive person, the longer you stay with them, your expectations of how you wish to be treated get lower and lower. You begin to put up with being treated poorly without realizing it. And the longer you ride the cycle of abuse, and by the cycle I'm referring to idealization, devalue, discard, the longer you stay in this, you will be treated worse and worse over time. So you keep going through these cycles where the narcissist exhibits bad behavior. This is behavior that you just don't approve of. So you break up, they beg you to come back, they feed you a bunch of empty promises, they get back together, they promise you that they'll change, they'll go to therapy, all this stuff. And it happens again and again and again, and each time you take them back, they will be completely wonderful at first, and then their behavior will become worse than it was before. And they do this because they know they can get away with it, and they know that you're just going to get back together with them. Now, the process by which they suck you back into the relationship is known as hoovering. Hoovering has its own separate video. I have a few ideas in line first, but that's coming up soon. And they take advantage of your sense of hope. They give you empty promises, like telling you they'll go to therapy, they'll work on themselves, and that usually doesn't happen. On one of my many breakups with Robert, I gave him an ultimatum. I said, you have to go to therapy if you want me to get back together with you. And this was long before I knew what a narcissist was. I really just thought he was immature and depressed and a sex addict. I really didn't know what it was. But like I said, therapy is a must. You have to go to therapy. He said, okay, fine. And I think he went 4 times. And he said that the therapist said I'm cured. I don't have to go back anymore. Now, no therapist will say that to anyone. But since he was treating me better, I said fine, that's fine. They appeal to your sense of love and pity. They'll say, look, I had a rough life, I wasn't popular growing up, my parents died, this, relationship is new to me. And Robert pulled this kind of shit with me all the time, and I always fell for it. So whatever their bad behavior was that made you break up with them, it will only get worse when you take them back because they know they're just going to get away with it. Not only will it get worse, but they might actually find other ways to mentally torment you. And each time you fight about something, the insults and the put downs and this negative behavior will just get worse. So managing down of expectations is best described in the analogy, how to boil a frog. I was going to originally give the credit to the narcissist support channel when I first heard about this concept, but I've actually read about it in several different places, so it seems to be a very widely used analogy. So if you take a frog and hold him over boiling water, he won't willingly jump in. The water's too rough, it's too hot. But if you take this frog and put him in very nice, comfortable water, he'll be pretty happy. So you slowly turn up the heat, and his body begins to adjust to the new temperature. It might get pretty hot, but he'll get used to it. So what once might have been very painful and uncomfortable for the frog now becomes normal. And this is how abusive relationships progress. No relationship starts out terrible. Otherwise nobody would start this relationship. So the relationships generally start out really nice and comfortable, but you very slowly adjust to the bad treatment, and it starts to not hurt anymore. It starts to be very comfortable for you. You don't even realize that the dynamic is changing. Now, I met Robert in the summer of 2010. We finally broke up for good this past December 2015, so it's 5.5 years of nonsense. Looking back on it now, the stuff that he did and said towards the end of our relationship, I would have never ever put up with when we first started dating. But I didn't even realize. He was very convincing, and it's really amazing to me now that I rode the cycle for so long. We broke up about 6 times in 5.5 years, and each time I went back to him, it was incredible for the first few weeks, even the first few months, and then it got worse. Each cycle was worse than the one before, and I didn't even realize, because all I could do was focus on how great it was those first few weeks, and all I wanted to do was break that cycle because I wanted it to just be good and stay good forever. It never stayed good. And this is how we get stuck in these dynamics without realizing it, because we have hope. The narcissists know we're hopeful, which brings me to my next topic called intermittent reinforcement. So that link is down below. Please click it now. I want to treat the second video as a part 2 for this one.